with Christian Book, an English professor, a poet, and a scientist who takes commitment and creativity to a whole new level.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Excellent,
Thank you for having us.
I'm grateful to be here.
So the name of your project currently is called Xenotext.
Yeah, the Xenotext. The word quite literally means an alien text, a strange text. I'm attempting, I guess, to produce a kind of parasitic poem. Through a process of encipherment, I would write two very short little poems. And one of them would be enciphered as a sequence of genetic nucleotides. And with the assistance of a laboratory, I would actually build that gene sequence in a lab and then implant it into the genetic code of a bacterium. So I'm basically trying to genetically engineer a bacterium so that it becomes not only an archive for storing my poem, but it also becomes a machine for writing a poem in response.
So now how did you come up with this idea?
I began to imagine how I might participate within these kinds of artistic practices and scientific practices in which messages are enciphered in the genetic codes of organisms. This has been done by numerous artists and numerous scientists. What makes my project different is that the organism actually reads my poem, reads my text, and does something in response. It actually reacts to it and writes a poem in response.
That doesn't sound so easy to me when you're describing it.
It's proven to be a much more challenging project than anticipated, in part because I'm trying to get the organism to behave according to my restrictions and of course, you know, life is capricious. I'm indulging a kind of dialogue with you know, the very building blocks of life itself. I'm trying to showcase life as a kind of poetic activity, a way of life.
Is there a name for the organism?
Yes, it's called Deinococcus radiodurans, meaning the dire seed immune to radiation. You know, it's a very strange bacterium, much beloved by graduate students in biology, and of course of great interest to scientists curious about how it is able to acquire all of these environmental immunities, because there is in fact no environment on the planet Earth that might guide the evolution of this organism. The only environments that we know of where you might have these extremes of heat and cold and desiccation and the ability to survive radiation are in the vacuum of outer space. So some scientists have speculated very extravagantly that this organism must have spent at least part of its evolutionary history off the planet Earth.
Now, how did you write the poem?
Well, the poem is very challenging to write. Because there is a complementary relationship between any DNA sequence and its resulting amino acid sequence that makes a protein, my poems have to somehow embody this complementary relationship. So in effect, what I've had to do is write a poem in such a way that I've assigned to every letter of the alphabet another complementary letter, and they're mutually correlated. So if, for example, I assign the letter A to T, I have to assign the letter T to A. If I assign the letter H to N, I have to assign the letter N to H. Mutually correlate the letters with each other.
And that's how it responds.
That's right. So
you say the one line and the other one's the response.
That's right. Yeah, like
okay.
the opening line of the poem, "Any style of life is prim," is the opening line to the poem I would write. The organism would read that line, and in response, it would write as its opening line, "The fairy is rosy of glow." Those two lines aren't the entire poem, though. No, it goes on for about 14 lines or so.
And what happens in 2014 if it does not succeed?
Oh, I mean, I'm stuck. I mean, I've worked very hard on this project,
yes.
So it would be very disappointing for it to fail. So failure is kind of not an option. I have to figure out how to make it work.
You're going to make it work.
I have to figure out how to make it work. I mean, it could be that it isn't possible, but unless I actually put the time in to it, I can't be sure that that's the case. So so far, you know, my endurance and commitment seems to be paying off insofar as I'm making progress, even though there have been many occasions when I thought very desperately that I might, in fact, have barked up the wrong tree completely.
What keeps you going?
I'm just a very stubborn person, I guess. Intellectually very stubborn, and in my experience, you know, in the world of art, it's a test of endurance, not so much a test of merit. You know, and people typically fail on the threshold of success. So, you know, I have faith in the language and its robustness. I mean, despite working, for example, for 4 years on a poem, with little indication that it was actually possible to write it, I nevertheless decided I was going to have faith in the language. And most of my projects are about doing the impossible thing. all my previous poems that I've written look impossible. They look uncanny and strange by virtue of the fact that the effort required to write them is
Takes a
Herculean.
long time.
It's a bit Sisyphean. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting, and
You've
we
been very
really
kind.
appreciate you spending the time.
No, I'm
it's
very
just
happy to
fascinating
oblige.
to me. The more I read about it, it's just absolutely fascinating.
Well, great. I'm grateful for your support. Thanks.
Thank you.